welcome back everybody. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, bringing you a video today on something I've been meaning to make a video on for quite some time, and that is how to replace your felt drip pad on any Singer machine. I guess because this could apply to other brands if you had one that used these drip pads, and why you should replace it and how easy it is. And so we're going to cover that today, along with some of the things you might want to have on hand if you decide to take on the project. So let's talk a little bit, we'll talk a little bit today about, why would you do this, right? Why is there a pad on, and we'll talk about Singer because this is the only brand I have found these on. If you found them on another brand, please let me know and educate me on that. But what you're looking at is the drip pan. This is the underside pan that gets bolted to the bottom of my Singer 403. Now the machines that I have seen this used on are the following. Singer Featherweights, or the Singer 221. I have seen them on those models. I can't swear about the 222 because I've never held one of those precious machines in with my bare hands. But for the 221 Featherweights, the Singer 301 Slant-O-Matics, the Singer 400 Slant-O-Matics. I think the Singer 500s had them, but I can't swear to it because I don't remember. It's been a while since I had a Rocketeer. And then for the subsequent follow-up series that Singer did, the Touch and Sews in the 600s and 700 series, I actually don't know. They're all Slant-O-Matic machines. But I can tell you that for the 300 and 400 series, maybe the 500 for sure, they came with these metal pans, and very often when you get them, they look like this. They look kind of gross. They're soggy, often full of oil. They are, and I can tell this one is it's an original, right? It still has the felt under the crimps. I'm willing to bet it's the same one. I don't think it was ever replaced. And even on my 403A, which I have ascertained to be a machine that was not used very often, when you're dealing with, 65 years or so of old oil and dust and grease, this drip pad did its job. And this is a place to kind of talk about one of the reasons you might want to replace it. It's not in sight. In fact, until you unbolt, there's a big thumb screw that attaches this to the underside, and I'll show that to you guys when we install this back in toward the end of this machine series overhaul. But one of the reasons you might think, well, why do I care? Because no one sees it. It just sits there. It can still soak up old oil. Well, there's a big reason why you might want to replace this. First of all, it's a very simple thing to do. It's not difficult. Maybe that's why I haven't done a video on this in a while, but I have to be careful of assuming that people see something as simple. Maybe they don't. Maybe they will find this useful. You guys let me know. But anyway, the reason, other than the fact that it's not a difficult project, it's not costly, it certainly can help your machine smell better. Now, this machine did not have an odorous, funky smell in terms of just being next to the machine. But I went and sniffed this pad, and I can promise you it does not smell nice. Why? Well, metal, to my knowledge, it's not good at absorbing odors. If you have a machine that smells bad, the metal itself is not what's stinking. There's something on the metal of your machine. Chances are it's old oil, old grease, dust, or a combination of those. And mildew and mold and other, God knows what other kinds of funky things actually are attracted to it over time, right? Not when it's first, used and oil first falls on it. But after 65 years, what you've got here is kind of a funky smelling old oil smell that's not pleasant. It's possible, although I can't tell for sure, that the machine that I have or you have, and particularly with this one, it may or may not have been in a home where someone smoked. I don't have a way to test it, and it's neither here nor there, because my machines, when I'm done, normally most of them came from smoke-free homes, because I could tell when I picked them up, right? I'm pretty sensitive to it and would notice it. But this one, I don't know for sure. But there's a way to help remedy this. Now, There could be many places in your machine where if you have old grease, old oil, it can absorb odors, even when that old grease and oil is on metal. But that's not as common, I don't think. It's certainly possible. If you have a machine, say that was left in a dank basement somewhere and it got very mildewed and moldy, you're going to have to clean that machine upside and down one side. You're going to have to clean it anywhere where that mold is, or you're going to have that smell. But what is more typical is this sort of, it's kind of a musty smell, but it's not because there was no mold on my machine. I didn't see any. I would know if there was. I'm sensitive to that as well. But this old felt, when you have oil that sits in the felt, it just makes a nice little home for odors. Maybe it absorbed odors from something. Who knows? In any case, that is the most important rationale for why you might want to replace it. So I'm going to show you guys how to do it. It's not difficult. You might be surprised how simple it is. So, a couple of things to talk about. First, we will, instead of carrying the camera, I'm going to kind of put it over here and let you guys, I'm going to zoom in for you. A couple of things you want. You don't have to have all of these things I'm going to show you, but you can use any of them, and the more you have, the more options you got. So there you go. First thing you want to do is get a good pair of sharp scissors for cutting your felt. You're going to want something to clean the pan with once the old felt is off. And I often save, these are old remnant pieces of fabric where I was doing test stitching, right? And usually, once I've gotten the stitches where I want them and the machine is stitching properly, I often keep a sample of that for the new owner so they can see it. You know, I want them to see it, see the testing I did. But sometimes, as I'm in the process of adjusting things, you know, and maybe it's too tight here, you can see the fabric was puckered, so that was telling me, oh, the tension needs adjustment. But I save these because these little remnants make good little scrubbing rags. Typically, you know, as long as it's a cotton or a very soft fabric, you don't want anything that's harsh that's going to scratch your paint finish. But typically, I find these nice to have, and I'm able to downcycle and use them before they go in the trash. So that's good. If you don't have these, you don't have to. It's not a must. It's not going to ruin this little procedure for you. You can get paper towels. They'll work fine. If you have blue shop towels, which they use, you know, around cars and garage place, those are tougher and they can be even better. The other thing you want to have is, in order of usefulness, at least I think, I've got chalk. Let's try that again. I've got chalk, right? And I've actually gone in and it's actually been beveled down. You don't have to. Some people don't bother, but I have it kind of like on a beveled point that's chalk. This chalk would work fine on just about any felt color except for white. You can use Sharpies. You can use ink. Now, I have tried in the past to use ballpoint pens with ink. Sometimes they might work for you, but they don't really lay down enough of a mark. It's harder. I can kind of make things out, and I've cut out these shapes many times, but it's not my favorite. But some of you, maybe that's all you got. Or you can take a marker. Now, these are Sharpies. Sharpies are designed to be permanent. If you don't have a permanent marker, don't worry about it. You can use, you know, a water-based marker. Maybe you have children who have marker sets or something. I think you could probably use a wax crayon if it will take onto the felt. Remember, you're putting a line on felt because we're going to be tracing into our new felt the pattern so we can cut out the new felt piece that's going in when we remove the old one. And I don't know how I ended up with all these Sharpies because I have to keep them far away from my dry erase boards because a Sharpie and a dry erase board is a disaster. You'll ruin your board. I've done that before. Now, I have, here's just a traditional Sharpie black, and it's got, you know, a little bit more blunt point on it. You could use this as well. And the only time Sharpies are not very useful is if your felt is dark colored, if it's black or dark brown. My Singer 403A originally came with, I believe the original color was actually a brown felt. I could be wrong. I know it looks brown just from dirt and grunge. And then you can replace it with whatever color felt you would like. So there's that. So you have different options, but you want something that you can use to trace with. Then you want something to clean with. Now, I have a small amount of rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, that I use to clean my sewing machines. Many of you know that in recent times, getting rubbing alcohol has been kind of tough with the COVID situation, right? And we have some, more important uses for alcohol right now and keeping things sanitary. And so this is something I had made a while back. This is a cleaner. It's kind of a homebrew cleaner that I made, but you don't need to know. This basically has distilled water, Dawn dishwashing liquid, and rubbing alcohol. And I had the luxury of making this before the viral COVID outbreak thing. So, and it's still here, and I don't think it's strong enough to sanitize with, but it's good for cleaning. If you don't have this, don't worry. If you don't want to use what you have left of rubbing alcohol because it's too precious right now, that's okay. You don't have to use this. You can use any number of household cleaners you might have on hand, but the point is we're going to have some grease, old grease or oil on this pan. We want to clean off before we put down our new one. So, I just realized I've got one more item that I'm missing here. You're also going to want some adhesive to put your new felt pad onto the plate with. Now originally, I don't know if Singer used any adhesive. Right now this is loose, but it could just be from age, or maybe it was put in that way, but you can tell the felt piece is, it sort of dovetails on these little, I want to call it a metal flange or a metal, it's kind of like a piece of metal built in, and I think the felt was probably put on with a machine or something in the Singer factory. Who knows, maybe by human hands. You can see it's so loose it's coming off. Sometimes these old felts, in spite of how old and oily and nasty they are stuck on, and they don't always come off easily. If they don't, there's a way to get that off, because in this case the oil that has saturated the felt over time, most of these old ones are like this. You can see me get my finger under it, and that's just because the oil and grease over time has softened any bond, if there was a bond, with glue. So basically, when you go to take your old felt off, you want to be extra careful and try not to tear it. If you do, you can still make do, but ideally you want to go into this not doing that. Now, what else might you want? Well, if you happen to have a putty knife, like I do, actually this is not a putty knife, it's a painting knife. I have a palette painting knife set that I've had forever, and I just remembered it when I was thinking about this project, and I thought, maybe you have a putty knife that you use to repair walls with before you paint it, or something like this that's flat. And what I want to do is get under this, and the reason, it sounds odd. Who cares about preserving this old gross, greasy thing? You're going to want this piece in as whole and intact as possible, because we're going to remove it from the pan, and then we're going to lay it on top of a piece of new felt. We're going to trace our replacement. That's essentially what we're doing, if you haven't figured it out by now. So I'm going to let's pull my focus back, because you guys are getting almost too much of a close-up. There we go. Let's see. So you can see I'm coming in. I'm just going to test. Let's see how, it's pretty loose, but I can see it's still attached to its mooring points on this pan. You can see this piece here, it broke here, but that's all right. We'll just preserve it. We can still use it. I'll show you. Let's see. Come in on this end. Just kind of prying. I'm prying around, testing to see what's okay. So it's loose almost everywhere except on its little. There are these little bent pieces of steel in the pan. You can see on the back. They've sort of created these, I don't know what the technical word is, but it's a way that the felt can sort of hang onto the pan. It kind of anchors it, keeps it from flopping around. So this side has come straight up, and I can tell, if I go underneath here, I can tell that this, if you look at this triangle here, guys, I don't know if you can make that out, right? Basically, imagine the bottom of this little triangle peeled back, because back here is a little peeled piece of, or bent piece of steel, which this was hanging into. I don't know if they put the felt on here in the factory and then punch the hole to anchor it in some way. I don't know. What's important, though, is that we know that if you can't get yours off, that's probably why. If yours is stuck on one of these little points, do the best you can, and you don't have to have one of these. If you don't have this, you can use just a flat screwdriver. Not a Phillips head, but you can take like a flat screwdriver And what you want to do is to try to get this off of the hinge of the little clip that's built into the pan without tearing it as much as possible. You may tear it some, that's okay. Don't let that discourage you. You're still going to be okay. You just want to keep as much of the original shape as intact as possible. So this side here, right, I want to see, if you look at the pan, this triangle is going this direction, this one this direction. So can I slide this off? Oh, I managed to without tearing it. This one, can I slide this one off? Well, this one's already broken it. I'm not surprised it broke it to the narrow area. Let's take a look at this one down here. It's already off. Okay, so we got this side off. This side is going to want to go in the different direction. Oh, well, look at that. Mine almost entirely came off without much effort, but I got lucky. Sometimes they're a little fussy. Now, I'm going to try to pull this down. If I pull it down, hopefully I can preserve as much of this as possible. Oops. Well, I tried. I can't always get it out. Sometimes it's stuck in there, right? So you can see I got most of it off. So here we go. This is what I've got. Here's the good news. I've got all of this, the perimeter of this felt pad is still intact, okay? Now, one thing you might notice, you'll notice that it fits the entire pan shape all around. On this side, it doesn't. It comes down like this. Your machine may vary, but whatever it came with, that's what I would go with in terms of. Oh, by the way, it'll be obvious to you because how the new piece is gonna go, because you'll look at the shape. The shape is not symmetrical, so that makes it a little easier. Okay, so we're gonna take this off. What's left? Well, I'm lucky. I see some oil and some dirt, but it's not bad. I've seen a lot worse. But all of these can be cleaned, so don't. If yours is nastier than this, don't let it bother you. It's just more for you to clean. Now, there's a little piece of the old felt that's still stuck here. It's stuck under that little metal bent piece. I can try to pull. I just pulled a good bit of it out. Oh, I can really smell it now. This smells like old funky oil. If you are extra sensitive and you think you might not want to do this indoors, you can take it outdoors. I don't have a problem indoors, but again, we all vary in how sensitive we are. So use your own best judgment based on what you know about your own sensitivity, if you have any. Now, notice I'm going to try to pull some of this standing in the light. Might help if I don't do that. Okay, you see this little bit of felt still clinging to that little triangulated bent piece of metal. I'm just trying to get most of it out here. And I might take, what else can I do? Get one of my small screwdrivers that's even smaller and try to coax out the little remaining piece. It's not for aesthetics or for padding so much as just, you want as much of the old stuff out as possible. You'll have a much more fresh smelling machine if you do. I think it's kind of amazing that these felt pads lasted as long as they did. They've just been sitting here soaking up machine oil. Now, I've often wondered why more companies didn't do this. Singer did it. You can see why, because people were told to oil their machines. The machines were often in a nice public room, in a parlor or a living space of people's homes. And if you oiled the machine, maybe it needed a little extra oil, you might find oil on your floor or on one of your beautiful carpets, or rugs, I should say. Back in the day, people were not, I think wall-to-wall carpeting didn't really become a thing until probably the late 50s, early 60s. Anyway, so I've gotten virtually all of this out. How much you want to take out is really up to you. How much time do you want to give to that? Take my lint brush, maybe I can get some of that little bit left. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I'm satisfied with that. So now what do? You want to take some cleaner, and again, this is my own little home brew, but you don't need to do this, guys. I originally made this stuff to get stains out of carpets, but you can use whatever cleaner you might want to get this clean. And I'm just going to take my old fabric remnant here and Again, this is actually not bad. Most of the stuff stayed in the pad. Sometimes it goes right through and you end up with a greasy, dirty, dusty pad that you got to clean. And if you do, you just clean it, right? It's not a tragedy. It's just something to know. If yours looks dirtier than what you see in this video, sometimes that happens. In fact, most of mine are usually pretty dirty. Now, it may have occurred to some of you, hey, is there a way that I can just order this? Do I, can I just, can I just order one so I don't have to get felt? I don't have to cut it and trace it and all this. I don't find it particularly time consuming, but if you have a Singer Featherweight, you can go onto the internet. You may find one in a sewing store, but again, it's a specialty item. But you can go onto the internet and order a pre-cut new felt for your Singer Featherweight, right? They have a lot of reproduction parts for featherweights. Now, they might have them for other Singers, such as this model or the 301. If any of you have ever gotten these pre-cut and made, let me know. I haven't found them, but maybe I just haven't looked in the right spot. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our pan, just let the whatever's left on it dry. This cleaner dries pretty quickly. And, how clean is it? Look at it once you've cleaned it. Sometimes it takes multiple cleanings with a fresh rag or paper towel to get all of the oil off. I got lucky. I think I'm good. But you may need to go back several times, because if it still feels greasy and we go to put on the new felt, it's you may not get a good bond, right? Oil does not often mix very well with glue. I want to come over here and make sure I think I got this little top cone-shaped area. I just want to make sure. Okay, make sure you get around the edges too, because you want your new pad to bond at the edges. Okay, we're going to let that dry for just a moment. Okay, let's take a look at our felt. This is our original old felt, and I've got lucky. Sometimes it'll tear more at these areas. Don't worry about that. Try to get as much of this as you can intact. What you need to be able to do is to trace all the way around the perimeter of this piece along with the circle. If pieces are missing, you do the best you can. You fill in the best you can. But many of you will be able to take off enough of this to at least get a good feel for it. Now, now that we know what we're working with, in terms of felts, the felts are cheap and easy to get. You can get them at a craft store such as Michael's, but it doesn't have to be Michael's. A lot of fabric stores carry these, whether it's a chain or an independent. Just say, do you have felt squares? Now, these are used for a variety of things. You can see in the past I made one that was beige and had a little piece left over, but not enough for my pan. The first thing you want to do is, whatever you've got, if you have something, make sure you've got enough felt. Okay? This color, I don't have enough. Now, what if I wanted to make it out of a piece of green felt? This felt is not long enough to cover every single area, but most of it, though. Well, almost. I would be missing a little bit. If that happens to you, but you have enough, you can use more than one piece. Okay? So how would you do that? I'll show you in a minute. If you've got, maybe you don't have a piece of felt big enough, but you've got a combination of pieces that you can use. I like to keep mine the same color, but maybe you don't. Maybe you want to just use what you have, because this is really for a practical purpose, right? You're not showing this felt off and displaying it or anything. So it's really depends on how retentive you are about such things. So if I was in a pinch and this was all I had and I couldn't get more felt for a while, I'd make do. So that's really up to you. So over here I've got felt. This is a piece of gray felt. The felt comes in a myriad of colors. Some people like to use black, which I believe the Singer Featherweight felt pieces come in when you buy them. Other people will use brown. I think the 403 originally had a piece of brown felt. Or you could use green. You could even call this Singer Green or Singer Red or whatever you choose to. Right? Now, if my 403 was a rare, very precious, very important machine that I was restoring for a museum or a private collection, then I would probably say, you know what, I'll wait. I'll get to the fabric stores when they reopen them. Maybe they're reopening soon, and I can get a piece of brown felt and be more historically accurate. But for something that neither performs, it's not a structural piece. It's not like a gear. It's not even something you normally see. Then for me, my purpose is the whole reason I'm doing this is to A, get the stinky one gone and get a new felt in, so when I go to oil the machine, it doesn't drip onto my floors. So there's a very practical purpose for this felt. So you have lots of options. Oh, and the last thing, is this the last thing, or who knows, is glue. Now, if I take a piece of felt and I try to hang it, let's say I cut it, I'll get my pattern cut, right? If I want to get this, I can try putting it onto the felt little clip things, but that's very difficult to do. I don't know if it requires a special tool or more know-how than my brain has. But the concern here is that if I try to do this, and I don't know how it was done in the factory, but if I try to do this, it's not going to hold it and it's going to flop around. And typically, gravity keeps your felt down, but if you're one of those people that likes to hide your machine and you're moving your machine around or you're swinging it down, it's going to potentially flop up, and you never want this to become entangled in the mechanical workings of your machine. You can imagine why you would not want that. So let's not take that chance. What I am going to do is use a form of glue. Now, I've tried different things. You guys may have luck with things like super glues and others. I have actually had pretty good luck with contact cement. It's like, what the heck is contact cement? This is, I think I showed this in one of my earlier videos on my toolbox. Now this brand, I got this, it says cement for metal and wood. It is basically, this is an old form of glue that was used years ago. You can still buy it. I got this one at Michael's Arts and Crafts, but I'm sure you can get them at different crafts and hobby stores. There are different brands. There's one called Duco, D-U-C-O, and I used to get that one at a craft store, and I couldn't find it last time, but they're all very similar. You really, if you're going to use this, you've got to use this with great ventilation. It stinks to high heaven, guys. It has got a lot of solvent in it, okay? It's not a water-based glue, so take extra care, right? It's like any of these things. Some of the materials we use in crafts and projects we do, if it has a funky smell, aerate your place. I have right now at this moment as I'm making the video, I have a huge sliding glass door with a screen open, and I know what my tolerance is, and I know that I'm going to be using this, but you can use a fan, whatever you need to use. You can even do it outside. It's a gorgeous day today. I could go on the porch and do this. But anyway, the point is, this stuff has a lot of solvent and fumes in it, so be careful with it. It's not craft glue you would give to use in child projects, for example. So you want to use this more carefully. Okay, so what am I going to do? I've got a clean pan. I've got a dry pan. But I'm not going to use the glue yet. You may, by the way, have glues that you find that work better than this. If you do, let me know. I'm happy to check them out and try them. I don't use wood glues. Super glues that, there's a lot of brands of the super glues. I have those, but I don't find that I can get them to work well with fabric. And that's how I discovered this. There may be something better to use that doesn't stink as much as this. And again, if you know of any, tell me. I'm probably going to use most of what I have left for this last project. But if I pay attention to my own direction, I'm not ready to glue yet. Okay, and now we are ready for the tracing. So what I want to do, oh, by the way, I thought I had this as felt. This is actually it's a car chamois, and it feels like felt. It's not microfiber, because I don't recommend microfiber at all for this project. Most felts that you get, you can go online and find real sheep's wool felting. I have for my, I think I've shown you guys the felt I used for my little oiling wicks for the Singer 66s and 99s, because you need wool because it soaks up things. Today, I don't know what Singer would have used back then. I'm assuming it was some kind of maybe wool-based product, I don't know. This, and all the felts I typically see in craft stores are a polyester. They're made of a fiber that some of them are made of recycled soda bottles, right? So it's a synthetic. It's still going to absorb, not like wool, but it's not bad, right? And it'll still perform essentially the same function. We could really get out in the weeds and start talking about the different absorption rates, but for our purposes and the small amount of oil that you normally should be using to keep your machine oiled, this should work fine. It's worked fine in all of the times I've been using it for like 9 years now. Anyway, but if you didn't have any felt and you had a synthetic chamois laying around, you could use this as well, because I suspect this is basically, they call it a synthetic chamois, but it's a glorified, extra strong piece of synthetic felt. So for mine, I like the Singer Classic colors. I could use any of these and they would work great. I'm going to use the green, which reminds me a lot of the Singer green. And this is a good place to get all these out of the way. I don't need those. Or you could use red. I don't have any red at the moment. I should probably get some next time I'm in the craft store when things reopen. So I'm going to take my new felt, and remember, I already know this piece is not long enough for this 16.5-inch wide Singer footprint. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a remnant, I've got a piece, you can see where I cut out another pad in the past, but I save my scraps for this very reason, because I can use them. I can also use them to cut a felt washer if I ever run out. Felt washers you can buy online, they're so cheap, it's so nice to just buy them pre-cut and so forth, but you can make your own if you had to in a pinch, and that's what I love about this hobby of restoring machines, that you have ways of making do that are okay. They don't compromise the machine, they don't compromise your sewing, but they help you get the job done, right? We aim high to do the best we can, and then depending on what it is, we can compromise. Certain things you don't compromise on, like the oil you use for your sewing machine, but other things you can. Okay, so here is the old piece, and I don't really know that it matters which side we start on, but I'm going to lay it down right here. And you can see I don't really need a lot of overlap, but I did need some because this piece is a little longer. And in order for me to get it just so, I've decided that made that decision. I'm going to go ahead and lay things out here. This one end comes up to the border of the green on this side. And I don't lack much, but a little bit over here will help me. And it'll be two pieces, but when we get it all cut, it's going to be fine, and it'll look fine, and it'll function fine. So, without further yapping, let's see how this turns out. I like chalk. Well, I said that. I can use the chalk as my outline. It's kind of blunt for this particular felt. By the way, some of the felts you find have a firmness to them, and some of them are kind of floppy. If you find the firm felt, those can be a little bit easier to work with, but this floppy stuff will do just fine. It's going to look fine and function fine. It's just getting everything patterned out is a little different. So I think I will try one of my Sharpies. Let's see how that works. Okay, the Sharpie, and these are the, this is a fine point Sharpie here. You know, they come in different. I would not get the giant fat nub Sharpie because I think that's probably a bit too, just a bit too wide for our purposes. Now I'm going to test this. I got to see if this Sharpie is in fact doing anything. Well, I know it's got ink in it because I just wrote on that old fabric remnant. Let's see how this works. Okay, I'm just going to take a peek. Okay, I'm getting a decent line here. You just basically, what you're looking for, folks, is you need a line that you can see, okay, because you're drawing on fabric. And I think they make fabric pens. Some of you who are big-time sewers, or maybe you're just a sewer who likes to have a fabric pen, and you might have something that you know will work, but not all of us do. Some of us are brand new at sewing or working on sewing machines, and getting to a store these days can be very stressful, particularly if you're having to go in person. I'm starting to order more of my things online just to avoid going. I do miss going into stores, and I hope one day I'm able to go back and enjoy, all of us get to enjoy being out in places and not having to be scared. But in the meantime, we will press on and we will figure things out. So as you can see, I'm tracing around here. This should be obvious, but I'll mention it. Try as best you can not to move this off of here, or you'll throw off your tracing. If you're really worried about that, I'm just sort of pressing and holding it in place. It's not that bad. If you're having really big issues with that, you can always pin it with sewing pins, I suppose. And you may have to do, I don't know if it's obvious what I'm doing here, but sometimes, because my hand's in the way, I'm right-handed. When you are doing this, sometimes you have to kind of do this back and forth just to get that ink line in there, because again, ink pens were not really designed to work on fabric, although that never seems to stop them from staining our clothes when we drop it on them. Okay, before you move this, you want to come in and also do this inside circle. And I'll pull this up in a minute. You guys can see what I've got here. And because I need to know that I can actually see this. And how much of a line you need, how much contrast, depends on your vision and the light you're working in. Now, if I pull up on this, what I can see, and I think you guys can see this, but I'll zoom in just in case. Don't like to assume. Now, I'm going to pull this up. Okay, and it looks a little faint over here, right? I'm going to have to see this. I'm going to come back. I didn't move my template, my old piece here. I just kind of took a peek underneath to see, okay, what am I getting? Because you can't always tell until you pick it up to see what's there. And then, of course, the other trick, this sounds simple, but, you know, it bears mentioning, and that is everything that I have drawn here. You don't want to try to cut, say, you know, outside that line, because you're going to end up with a piece larger. I would rather err on the side of smaller. So wherever you see your line, you want to be to, in this case, to the left of it, right? You want to be on the inside side of the line you just made, because that's the closest and most accurate, there we go. The closest and most accurate measurement is going to be to cut on this inside, if that makes sense. So I'm going to cut, my scissors, I'm going to cut on this side, not this side. Otherwise I'll end up with about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch too much. And then I'll have to go back and retrace it. And if it's a tad smaller, that's okay. Because remember, it needs to fit onto this pan, this tray, and there's a little rim here on part of it that can kind of help guide you when you go to place it on there. Okay. So I am going to begin. I'm going to do my circle. I find that that's helpful if I do that first. So I'm going to come in with my scissors. I think I better pull my zoom back out here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start inside the line, and I'm simply going to cut like I was cutting a piece of pie. Hey, felt pie. And then I'm going to come over to, again, I want this side here, right? Because now my metal came here, so I want to go to, again, the outside of this line. And I'm simply going to cut out this big circle. Lint brush attacking us here. And you know what? As you hold this, you've got your line, you've got good scissors, and cut it out as accurately as you can. Okay, we're not talking about digital accuracy here. If you cut it too small, you can trim more. If it's slightly too much, maybe you cut too much, you can try to fill it in, or you can just simply leave it. It's not going to make or break the world. But again, you want it to look nice. We aim high, and then we do the best we can, right? I suppose you could say that about everything, whether it's sewing or any other project. Okay, now that's not too shabby, right? That's not bad. Now let's come over here, and again, I want to cut on this side of my line, and I can start over here on my corner. The only thing I think that would be more exciting than watching me cut felt is to watch paint dry or to watch grass grow. So it's springtime, so I'm just taking my scissors and just cutting. Some people will use a cutting wheel like you use for fabric. You can do that. If maybe that's faster for you. I don't know about on the circle here, but certainly on these straight edges, I still think you're going to need to cut with scissors when you get to these. There's a couple of areas where the shape kind of squiggles. It's not at perfect right angles, which is what cutting wheels are really extra good at, based on my limited knowledge of cutting fabric. Okay, I'll come over here. Now I've got on this side, guys, remember the shape is a little funny over here. It stops right there about 1/4 of an inch before the edge, and then it comes down and it kind of wiggles around. And I'm going to cut that as best I can. And that shape is a little odd, right? It doesn't always pick up well when you draw it. So you're going to, you want to just come in and do the best you can. You know that there's a notch there. If your notch is not completely, pull the pan up and I can show you what I'm talking about. So if your notch doesn't cut this shape exactly correct, you can correct that when we're done, okay? So don't let that bother you. It's, there we go. I can actually show you guys what I'm up to here. You can see how things are starting to take shape. I've still got more cutting to do, and then we can make some adjustments as we need to. I'll have that one strip to put over here. I thought I'd show that to you. That's important to do, by the way, because you can also trace this, and if you trace it backwards, you can end up doing the whole thing backwards and having to redo it. I did that one time, and then I learned my lesson. So here we go. We'll go ahead and get this side, and we're getting gravy here, guys. I'm just cutting this long piece. Again, I'm not going to break out. I have a fabric cutting wheel, but I'm not going to break it out. I don't need it really. Let's see. Okay, so this is going to, this is that. Because we will know in just a minute if I've done this right or I've done it wrong. But you know what? So what? It's felt, right? It's not precious silk, it's just felt. So let's see. Now I'm going to take this and see where we are. We're not done yet, not done, but actually, before I do that, let me go ahead and cut out this little piece that I'm getting from the other side here. And we will take these pieces and see how they fit on the pan. And like I say, it's unlike a jigsaw puzzle where things really need to be exact. We're going to be getting as close as we can here. And the great thing is, this is not something that's, going to have to be redone for a really long time. These pads last a long time. It's got the original one from 1956, so I think we're okay. Now I've got some scraps. I'll keep these. I'm not sure if I'll need them again. I might. But it doesn't take much to store scraps of felt. It's not difficult. It doesn't take up a lot of space. So I'll take all these and put them back in my felt pile. Now, let's take a look at what we got here and see how I did or didn't. All right. Now, I've got this piece here. I'm going to fit it in as best I can, and I'll zoom in a minute. You guys can get a close look at where I did good and where I might have missed the boat. All right, now, okay, let's take a look. I'm going to move the camera, guys, and try to get it centered right over everything. Let's see. see what I came up with here. I'll zoom in a bit. You can see, like I say, for the most part, everything fits. What you don't want to do is have anything that's overlapping, because if you have something that's coming over the edge, it's going to catch where the pan and the base of the machine meet. I don't know if it's going to break anything, but it's, you know, you want it to be as flush as possible. So, and I'm okay with this. This is fine. I can probably take just a hair off here. I'm really sort of splitting hairs, splitting felt. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, my next thing here is to simply get my glue down. And one thing to note about this glue that I'm using, it doesn't have a lot of working time. It dries very fast, right? And it's all that solvent that helps it dry. That's one of the things that makes it stink. So again, I've got a ton of ventilation in here. Highly recommend you do that if you use this product. So what am I going to do? I know that I'm going to need, let's see, get out of the light here so you guys can see. I'm going to have felt coming here, right? And I want to make sure you get your periphery, right? Because you know where the felt has an edge is a place where it might want to lift up on you. But again, we haven't done any overlapping, so that's great. Now I'm just going to come in here. You don't need to spread this stuff with a knife or anything, because again, you don't really have a lot of time. The reason I'm doing this so quickly is I've got to hustle, because this glue will dry so quickly. Now this stuff smells, just when I was telling you guys it stinks, I don't know if any of you ever made models out of plastic. They had something called modeling glue in the hobby shops. It's similar. It's got like I say, it's nasty stuff. All right, here we go. I'm going to take my piece. Make sure that you are getting as close as you can, because your option for moving this is it's a very narrow window. So notice I'm pushing down, okay, and my angle is right here. You know, it's a little off, but that's okay. I'm on the inside rim of my pan, and that is what I'm after here. And before I come back and finish that padding, I need to come back, and I've got this one little piece I better do, and I've got a little bit of space here. I need to add some glue, and I'm gonna have to get more. Now I'm gonna come over here with this piece, make sure that it fits with this one in here, you know, and that I'm doing okay. I can fill the rim here, so it's not overlapping. It's pretty flush actually, and got a little bit there that might have to come off. But now I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to push. This glue is so strong and so quick acting. I don't need to use clamps. I don't really need, I mean, I guess I could put something heavy on it, but honest to God, I don't really need to do that. This glue works very well with fabric and metal, which is the reason I found it. Again, if any of you have something that works better, let me know. Maybe you've got something that would be easier and less stinky and fume creating to deal with. So I'm not going to put this on the machine right away. I would like it to, see if I can, if I can't get anything that's overlapping with my scissors, I can also get like a, you know, a straight razor or an X-Acto blade or something and try to get it there. But this is really, I'm not even really worried about this. When the glue dries, this little piece here, it's barely going to be noticeable. There you go, guys. That is how you replace the felt on a Singer Slant-O-Matic. You can use this same procedure for a Singer featherweight, so you don't have to buy one online. It's a nice convenience, and I think the ones for the featherweights are even self-adhesive. You don't even need to buy glue. You just buy them, you stick them on. But if you don't have access to one, or you don't want to wait for one to come, or maybe you just want to make your own, I don't know what they charge, $14, $15 for those pre-cut featherweight felts. Well, this one cost me glue and a piece of felt, and there you go. And that is something that you definitely want to do, and it should, when this is all cured and dried and you've gotten it back in, if you clean the rest of your machine well, you really, if you're having issues with odor, this should help, okay? Unless you've got other problems that are undiagnosed with your machine, This is really going to help get rid of that stinky old oil smell. And it's time we took the old felt and retired it. It has served its purpose. It deserves retiring, and now we've got new. And again, the color is up to you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thank you for watching all the videos. I've been producing quite a few here on this Singer 403. It's been a while, it's been a long time, so it's nice to get back to the 400 series, and sometimes you sort of rediscover all over again what was so magnificent about them back in the day. Take care.